Well, Antony Blinken, who really likes to think outside the box when it comes to diplomacy, given that he doesn't practice any of it. I want to just play an excerpt of a speech that he gave
You
today.
have to?
I know, trigger warning. Yeah, I should have told you to get an earplug for this part. But he had some interesting things to say about the impact of Israel's, war on Hamas, which is what they, of course, call it.
Indeed, we assess that Hamas has recruited almost as many new militants as it has lost. That is a recipe for an enduring insurgency and perpetual war. The longer the war goes on, the worse the humanitarian situation gets in Gaza.
So what's your reaction to that?
Well, I think this can be interpreted in two ways. The first is that he's setting up the pretext, the justification for Israel to continue its attacks on the Gaza Strip and the Palestinians in the event of a ceasefire agreement. We have something similar in Lebanon, where a formal agreement was reached, and then there was a bilateral U.S.-Israeli side agreement that basically entailed Washington authorizing Israel to treat the formal agreement that was reached as irrelevant and do as it pleases with U.S. support. And perhaps there's something similar in the works now with respect to Gaza. But, by coming out and saying that Hamas has recruited as many people that it's lost and that Israel is still facing this threat, seems to me that Blinken's real purpose is to provide a pretext and a justification for continued Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip. At the same time, he's stating the obvious. I have no idea where he gets his figures. It's said that the U.S., when it comes to the Palestinians, doesn't generate much of its own intelligence and relies primarily on the Israelis. But, you don't need to be a senior intelligence official to conclude that, people subject to Israeli genocide are probably not going to become card-carrying Zionists and are much more likely to join any movement that they see as either opposing or confronting or seeking to extract revenge on those responsible for genocide.
Especially when the response to nonviolent protests is violent and oppressive. And,
Precisely.
As we saw with the Great March of Return, where they were celebrating, again, there's this sick Israeli phenomenon of, instead of hiding their crimes, obviously a lot of people made this point, but it's not even the banality of evil. It's like the celebration of evil and the documentation of evil.
Yeah, and it's been this really bizarre dichotomy where you have a combination of denial and celebration. This isn't happening, but we need more of it.
Exactly.
There wasn't a Nakba, but we need another one.
Right, exactly. This is Nakba 2.0, which there wasn't a Nakba, but we're doing a 2.0. Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah. I want to show another clip of Blinken, and this is a clip that I think you'll probably enjoy more than the other one.
Antony Blinken, Secretary of Genocide, you have the blood of hundreds of thousands of innocent people on your hands. We have spent a year trying to appeal to your humanity in front of your house. We've written you letters. We've held car rallies. The blood of innocent civilians, of children, is on your hands. We will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hold you accountable. We will hold you accountable. Please, Blinken, Secretary of Genocide. Shame on you. Shame on you.
So what did you do?
Yeah. So.
Well, Secretary of Genocide, very well put. Having said that, I think we also need to understand that, unfortunately, there isn't going to be accountability. Blinken will probably go on to a very lucrative retirement, will probably write a memoir in which he reflects on the Gaza genocide, which he will, of course, repackage as something entirely different, as one of the proudest moments of his long and illustrious career, exceeding even his proposal to partition Iraq into 3 separate states. I think, also if you listen to Biden's speech this afternoon about his extraordinary foreign policy achievements during the past 4 years, these people do not have an ounce of regret. To the contrary, they take genuine pride in what, from their point of view, they've achieved and accomplished.
Yeah. And it's disgusting, that what is it? One of his last acts is going to $8 billion of weapons.
Yes, a parting gift. Yeah.
A parting gift, yeah. I mean, and that's so, lest anyone think that Biden just had to do this for political reasons, and he didn't want to do it, but he had to get reelected, and it was a four-dimensional chess move, and it was the ends justify the means, because it was obviously better for him to be president or Kamala to be president than Trump. This totally, debunks that claim. That had no water anyway. I remember saying a bunch that I really wanted to create a narrative that Netanyahu had done something to slight Trump so that Trump would retaliate against Netanyahu. Like if there was something personal that upset Trump, I thought that would be a good way to potentially get a shift in policy towards Israel.
Well, that's where we are in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he apparently was Soleimani. It was like a meme war that really got him to call for his assassination. I actually want to not to be too self-referential, but I do want to play a little clip from a discussion that I had with Fouad Dakwar and Brianna Joy Gray, where we did talk about this potential for Trump to do something that Biden wouldn't do, not because he cares about Palestinians, obviously, but for other reasons. Let's take a look. And I'm exhausted, and I did have a martini. But one thing I did want to say is I actually think that the argument, I get that it's morally repugnant, but I don't think that I've often thought that how can it get any worse? It's already a genocide argument is flawed. Not morally. I understand it morally, but I actually think I could imagine where a lot more people are killed. Yeah. And a genocide, obviously a genocide is already a genocide, and it's it's beyond comprehension. It's evil, right? But maybe there could be a genocide that was like killing twice as many people, let's just say for argument's sake. But I also do think that I could see Trump, and I don't know, I could see Trump being worse, or I could see him being better. And certainly if he was better, it would not be for any moral, ethical reasons. I think that he is an opportunist. He's not an ideologue. He's not an ideological Zionist, the way that Biden is. Now, I actually think Kamala is more of an opportunist also. Biden's an opportunist too, but Biden's more ideological than Kamala is, I think. But I could see Trump, similarly to the way that Clinton was able to get NAFTA in a way that Bush couldn't get it in. Right. And, no one's going to accuse Trump ever of being soft on Palestinians or being hard on Israel. So that's one thing I could imagine happening. And then we shifted into vote shaming or voter blaming. But yeah, I was actually, that was something that I think a lot of people thought was possible. I remember Rashid Khalidi suggested something like that could happen. And I actually felt a lot of pressure from various people to not say that, because I think people didn't even want to hear the possibility that Trump could possibly do something, again, not for the right reasons, but that was actually better for Palestinians.
No, I think you're completely right. But I would like to add another dimension, which is the role of Arab governments. While Biden's fanaticism and so on is I think rightly identified, I don't think we could have seen the genocidal campaign that we have under any of Biden's predecessors for a variety of reasons. But I also don't think we could have had it without the level of Arab governmental inertia and outright complicity in certain cases that we've seen. They could, if they had moved more and moved faster, I think they could have created sufficient pressure on even the Biden administration to rein in Israel. And they simply refused to lift a finger, again, for a variety of reasons. And I think moving forward with Trump, it also depends very much on how key Arab states, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and a few others, how they respond. Will they simply go along with everything that's decided by Washington in order to curry favor with this mercurial, temperamental U.S. president? Or will they recognize the dangers that these developments are posing to their national security, perhaps even to their own regimes, and seek to persuade or coerce Washington to take a different course. I'm not optimistic, but I do want to also point to the absolutely vital role that's played by Arab action, and just as importantly, Arab inertia.
And what are the motives there?
Well, let's take again Saudi Arabia, where you have the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's any day now is going to be appointed king and is seeking to bolster his legitimacy, who has to deal with the very widespread and very, very deeply felt feelings among his own citizens towards what is happening, and can't just go and normalize relations with Israel as if nothing has happened, but at the same time may feel there are significant gains to be had for him, for his legitimacy, for the stability of his rule in the decades to come, if he can pose as the one who actually achieved something for the Palestinians, particularly if he comes to the view that with Trump in the White House, he can do it through cooperation rather than confrontation with Washington. I'm just speculating, and I'm certainly not predicting that this is what's going to happen, but I think these are the kinds of possibilities that we need to keep an eye on. Another one, of course, is if you were to get a new wave of upheaval in the Arab world along the lines of what we had a decade and a half ago, that could once again motivate Arab states to either draw closer to Israel in order to protect their own regimes, or contrary-wise, to seek a political achievement that they feel would perhaps bolster them with their own public. So there is just I think one important difference going into the second Trump administration relative to the first. In 2017, you had a very clear alignment between Washington, Israel, and conservative Arab states about isolating and weakening Iran. And all three viewed Iran very similarly and had an identical agenda. I think this time around, they're much less in sync than they were 8 years ago. Israel, I think, is as gung-ho as ever. Washington, potentially less so. And the Arab states, I think, have sobered up from seeing how Washington did nothing to protect them when there were Iran or Iranian-inspired attacks against the Gulf states during the Trump administration. And they now also see Israel as not only a partner, but also as a regional pyromaniac, setting the entire region aflame, and don't want to be caught in the resulting fire. And in fact, have already been reaching out to Iran in various ways during the past year. And also, I think they probably see Iran as a less significant threat than the one it posed 8 years ago.